What's up, Rockstars, and welcome to my review of Bloodborne, the board game from CMON. This is a game that's kind of been long coming when it comes to people being excited about it for retail and Kickstarter. I'll be reviewing it with retail in mind, just the core box. However, I did try some of the Kickstarter exclusive stuff and expansion stuff just so I could comment on that and see how it affects the game, so you know what you're missing or what you're not, or what you have and what you don't have, or anything like that. Let's go ahead and get into the review and see how this turned out. Now, as always, I'd like to first thank my patrons and YouTube members. It is through their financial support that I'm able to make reviews just like this, because I'm able to buy the product just like this. I don't get it for free, and I'm able to say exactly what I feel about it, and so you know it's my honest opinion and not my wallet's opinion, because my wallet would probably lie to you, but I will try not to. So if you appreciate that level of honesty and that level of independence from the game developers that I am critiquing, then there is a link down below for you if you're able to give. If not, though, that's fine too. A like, a comment, both of those combined, the algorithm loves that. So if you could do that for me as a quick, free favor, I would much appreciate it. And just let me know what your thoughts on this are, whether before the video, after the video, or just let me know that this was helpful in some way. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into things. Now, I'm not going to give a huge overview of the gameplay. There are other videos that could do that for you than this review. This review is reviewing it assuming you kind of know what it is you're looking at. But suffice it to say, in general, you draw 3 cards. They allow you to do different things. You can discard these cards to do different actions, whether it's to move, or to flip your weapon to its trick side or whatever, or to be able to attack at different speeds for different damage. Anytime you attack an enemy, the enemy attacks back, so you have a random enemy action that you then draw, and they will do things according to what they have here. Each enemy here, there's 3 of them. They have double sides. Eventually, you'll have to gain enough blood echoes, or you need to go to the Hunter's Dream to be able to upgrade your stuff. While you're going through the missions, you're going to have to do some insight missions. These are the side missions that kind of allow you to then do the hunt mission, which is the chapter. There's campaigns that are 3 chapters long. There's 4 of them in the main game. And really, that's all I care about explaining right now. That gives you kind of the gist of it, really. Honestly, that's pretty much it. You got a good idea. I will be talking about specific gameplay mechanics throughout the review as I talk about what I liked and didn't like and the pros and cons with them. So you'll know a little bit more by the end of this video still too. But suffice it to say, you're moving around, you're doing missions, and you're fighting enemies. The exact order and everything like that doesn't really matter. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. I'm going to start like I typically do, where it's kind of your first impressions, and then after that, so it's like, okay, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to open the box and look at it, and then eventually you're going to read the rule book, and then eventually you're going to play the game. So I'm going to kind of review it in that order. Now, the first thing you're going to see on the very top is the rule book, but you're not going to read that, right? You're going to toss that to the side. Nobody cares about the rule book. You're here for minis, right? So next you're going to get that mini box. And the mini box has all of these minis in there. There's actually more than this, of course. There's actually quite a bit more than this, and there's some here too. They're hit and miss. I am not putting this as a positive. It's definitely not a positive for the game. The minis aren't. It's not exactly a negative either. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, if you saw my review, or my unboxing, you kind of saw the wild roller coaster ride I had unboxing all of these boxes. There are some great minis in this game. There are some kind of bad minis in this game. There are a couple terrible ones in this game. The core box alone is typically pretty good, and then it's kind of hit or miss on the smaller box expansions that you can get. But for the most part, they're pretty darn good. They have a good scale to them and everything like that. The hero minis are pretty small. I mean, that's tiny, right? I think it's probably like at 28 or less. Maybe it's even like 25, 20. I don't know. It seems really small, but it's to give scale to your other minis. And in general, they paint up fairly well. There's not a whole lot of loss of detail or anything like that. It's more a sculpt design, and then just quality of the plastic itself that kind of can get in the way of everything else. But they're okay. It's just, you don't get this just for the minis. And, but don't think that the minis are like hot garbage either, because it's kind of depends on what you look at and how you look at it. So kind of a wash there. And I apologize for not starting on a pro or a console. Let's get right to that. So the next thing you're going to notice is the rulebook, right? There's a storage too, but I want to talk about that afterwards. So let's go ahead and dive into the rulebook, because this will kind of help explain, kind of set the stage for this review. So the first thing you're going to notice is that there is no index. So it's instantly a bad rulebook. Anytime you make a technical document that you want to be able to use live, like when you're actually doing something, and you don't have a quick lookup guide, you need an index. If you don't have that, you've failed. It's just as simple as that. There's not really two things around it. They do have a table of contents, and it is pretty granular. So that's nice, but it's certainly not perfect. And the other issue is this rulebook is kind of lacking. So it reads well, and you feel like you have a good grasp of it, and then you get to play the game. And you're noticing that there's like, okay, well, I have a card here that allows me to attack with a dodge card that clears its slot and staggers. When does all of that happen? And then they attack me at the same time. So we're attacking at the same time. They have a stun. I have a stagger. I have a dodge card, but then it's clearing the slot right away. Can I attack with that dodge card? And then if I do, does it still stagger as well? And or do I get the other benefit from it? Or once it's off the board, then it's gone. When does it leave? When does it clear the slot? That kind of stuff can get kind of messy. There's other times where the wording's kind of ambiguous about like, you like it says you must dodge with a 2. So does that mean if I'm dodging faster, I can do that, right? Well, no, actually it means like add a 2. The way I know a lot of this stuff is because there's actually a very comprehensive FAQ on Board Game Geek. I'll go and link to that down below. So if you have this game and you're just looking at it and all that kind of stuff, that's fine too. It is kind of required reading. There's a lot of questions you're going to come across with stuff like that where you kind of need to read it. And it's a long FAQ. There's a heavy FAQ involved here. And that's quite telling that this isn't as good as it could be if that level of FAQ is there. And there are still people asking questions and wondering about things. So yeah, anytime you need an FAQ that detailed with no index, it's just a wash. No, the rule book is not good. And so that's going to be a negative. Additionally, the setup instructions actually are kind of nice. So what you do is you pick your chapter, and it's just this deck of cards, right? This is your chapter here, right? Are these cards here. And you're going to start with an introduction. And so you just read the introduction. It kind of gives you a little bit about the game. And then you're going to have your chapter. Now, there's going to be 3 of these. This is a chapter 1 setup. And it'll say the enemies are the hunter mob, which are these guys here. Right? And then we have the huntsman minions, which are these guys here. And then we have the scourge beasts, which are these painted guys here. Painted great, I might add. And then so it tells you the enemy. Sometimes it'll be a random enemy. You can just pick any one you want at random, or you can choose, or whatever you want. And then there are tiles, and it'll say, I need the courtyard lamp, and the occupied house, and the Odeon chapel, and the ransacked house, and then ×2 random with a maximum as well, right? And the ×2 is amount of players. So in other words, per player, if you're playing solo, you'll just add 2. If you're playing with 2 players, you'll add 4, so on and so forth. Once you get that set up and you have everything there, you're then going to flip it onto its side, and it'll say at the start of the hunt, you reveal card 1. So you reveal card 1. And then it'll say if you end on the move on the courtyard lamp tile, you reveal card 5. You won't know ahead of time. You just start with a central tile. So you have to kind of explore and eventually randomly draw that. Same with if you end a move on the occupied tile or on the ransacked house tile. And so that's kind of what you put that there, and that's kind of driving everything. The first one at the start of the hunt, you'll get that hunt mission. The rest are insight missions, which are kind of like side quests. I'll talk more about those later. But suffice it to say, it's quite nice to set up. This was very similar to Solomon Kane. If you watched my review on that, it had a very similar thing where it's like, here's everything you need. To play this game, you're going to need these tiles, you're going to need these enemies, which tells you which cards you have. You're done. That's it. That's all you need. And that's actually really convenient. That it's a quick and nice and easy setup, and I really appreciate that. It doesn't have a big spread or anything like that either. This is a full, like, you're done playing the game. Like, this is the full map. It's about as big as it gets here. So, yeah, the setup, really, really nice. Additionally, when you are setting these up, as I said before, they are double-sided, and I think that's really nice. It adds some variety. In fact, the free little thing, if you watch my unboxing, you saw, hey, free thing, it's a third side that you could print out technically. And maybe at that point, you just give each one a number or something like that. It'd be kind of hard to, incorporate the third perhaps in a flip. I typically am just flipping them under the table and have, my kids or my wife or whatever say win, and then I'm like, okay, well, we have this side. But they'll be different. And so, like in this one, he has a slow 3 attack lumbering swing for a basic, and then a very fast with a stagger, 2 attacks, brick swipe, and his ability is a shoulder charge, where at slow speed, but before the hunter's attack, he moves the hunter minion 2 spaces away, and then unless that hunter dodges at a slow speed, they are moved and suffer 3 damage and stun. Or if you flip it over, then suddenly he has that lumbering swing, same thing, right? But now his special is an overhead slam, a slow that hurts for 4. It cannot be staggered and deals 2 damage to all other hunters in this space, unless they dodge at slow. And then he also has a brick stun ability as well. And so you'll see that there are differences. Sometimes it changes all the attacks, sometimes it changes to some, but it kind of depends on which version you're getting. So you might find the hunter minions easy when they only have the shield bash, right? Because they're only doing 2 damage. Yeah, there's a stagger and a stun, but it's at a medium speed. But then you get the one with the rifle shot, and they're doing a 4 with a stun, but it's slow, but maybe you struggle with that more. So you can get different versions of them, and it really adds a nice amount of variety to that, which I think is quite great. So that's really cool. And in fact, the variety of the enemies, just in the core box alone even, is quite great. Now, once you get all the Kickstarter expansions and all that, then it's just mind-boggling. But the fact that not only do you have these 3, but then you have several other versions as well. Then you have a boss for each one, and then you also have double or triple sides to each of these. And there's actually quite a lot of variety. Additionally, when you place these matter too. So they'll spawn on their little icon here. And so the Scourge Beast might be here, but then he might be here the next one, and it might be the flipped version of him. And that can change how the feel is, especially because these tiles stay fairly static, where you'll see, the Tomb of Odian a lot, or you'll see the alleyway a lot. And the alleyway spawns this, but that might be a Scourge Beast this turn, but the other time it might be a Huntsman minion, and it might be the flipped version of him over there this time. Different things like that can be kind of interesting. So for instance, one of the first scenarios here when you're doing this one, which I think is the second mission, if I recall correctly, is to put all these tokens here in this graveyard, which spawns this enemy, whatever this enemy is. In ours, it was a Huntsman minion. It could have easily been the Hunter's Mob or the Scourge Beast, and then any of those iterations of there. So a great variety in enemies, where every time you play the game, even the same scenario, it does honestly feel different. And I know that because I went and played another scenario a second time as solo, so I could get some solo play in there too, so I can tell you guys about that. And it was different. It felt different, well, not just because of the solo, but because I was dealing with different enemies and they require different things. For instance, if we all need to be in there and suddenly we have a huntsman that attacks a whole area and then dodges out of the way, well, that's a lot different than maybe a Scourge Beast that is pouncing and lunging on you and just tearing up like one guy really bad. And so that's, I think, really, really cool, and one of the big strengths of this game for sure. All right, now I'm going to start getting into a few negatives, and a few big negatives. There's still more positive on the way. This is, in case you couldn't tell, there's a little bit of a mixed bag here that I'm going to kind of walk you through. But before I do that, I do want to mention my sponsor for this video, which is INTOTHEAM. They sent me this awesome shirt. I love their shirts. I talk about it all the time. I love the sleeves and how fitted they are. It is the softest shirt I have. I've washed this several times already. I've washed my other ones a ton of times, and they're not cracking, they're not fading, they're not doing any of that junk. They have a good length to it. It just is comfort. Additionally, they've been sending me their boxers, and oh my gosh, I could not gush about these enough. I know that sounds dumb, right? But they fit well. They are so comfortable. I will not buy any other boxers but theirs now. Period. I don't need that in my life. I have certain things I need to deal with, and that's one of them. Is I just want to be comfortable, right? I'm at that point in my life where I just want to wear comfortable stuff. I don't want to be itchy or scratchy or anything like that. A lot of the nerd shirts I used to wear, that you saw me wear, were not comfortable, right? They're thick, or they're not soft, and trust me, they're really, really good. And they're pretty great priced. There is a link down below for 20% off. That's through me. If you do that, it also helps the channel out as well, and, helps them out. And they have a great thing going on there. I really like what their aim at for, and kind of what they stand for, to just kind of empower people that work hard and make them comfortable while they do it. And I can certainly stand by that. So again, that's INTOTHEAM, and they have some sweet freaking designs. You can save some money down below, and again, helps the channel out too. So I appreciate that. And with that, let's get back into the review. Okay, now I'm actually going to slip in one more positive because I forgot to mention it, but this tray here, right? So this is kind of the other thing you're going to notice is the tray I love this tray. I really do. It has a great spot for all the tokens. There are a few other tokens that you leave down there, but they got a little spot there for them too. That's fine. I'm okay with that. You got a spot for pretty much everything. I'm going to try and put this in without... There we go. This has all of the like stretch gold stuff as well, and it still fits in there. You have each of your... I'll flip this over so you can see a little bit better. Here you go. There you are. Perfect. So they have the different... these are some of the bosses. There's another... mission there. There's some more guns, but again, a mission there as well. So there's all these different campaigns, all your, your cards here. This is a save system, which is also fantastic. And how you know it's you is you put your hunter card, your weapon there, which has your icon. And if you have one of the special weapons, like one of these that don't have one that you earn, you know which one you earned, right? And then you have your cards down below and which ones you got. So you can kind of save your deck even between them. Honestly, this is fantastic, and I really, really like it. I love the black. It's a great finish. It goes almost edge to edge. It's just really, really nice. It does not support sleeved cards. If it did, it would be bigger and everything would be loose right now for me. So, like, there either needs to be, to solve the sleeve, I'm not going to negate it for not having sleeved. It would have to be bigger, or they'd have to offer some other solution. Either I would be wasting space because I didn't sleeve, or for the people who do sleeve, then they can't use it. So it's kind of a hit or miss, but for what they provide, which are not sleeved cards, it stores it well. I'm going to count as a positive. I love the save system. I love the storage of what you see here. The miniatures, however, are different. Okay, so you know how I said that setup is great? Well, I kind of lied. And here's why. Ideally, setup is good. Setup is crap. Because you have to deal with this box here. This is stupid, and I hate it, and here's why. So, you're going to be taking this out, and you have... Actually lucked out. I was waiting for it to go bad, but I've done... You need a death grip on this right here, because this is completely loose, and it has no lid. I have dumped this twice now, where I've had to go and get it all back, especially putting it back, because you try to put it back, and you see how it like splays open like that, and then this lip goes up here, and you're like trying to do this whole stupid freaking thing, where you're just trying to get it in there, and it won't go in, and then like, when you get that out. The idea, by the way, when you do get this, is slide this out first, if you can, okay, and then do the rest. Why they didn't bother with the lid, I don't know. This whole loose thing, though, it's so, trust me, I'm tempted to dump it to prove a point, but I don't want to pick it up for a third time. It's stupid. There are several like this in the whole set, and I hate every single one of them. It's really a bad design. These are very flexible. It bends easily. It pops. It does all that. These aren't even set in there like completely even, so she pops up a little bit. So when because I'm not setting this lid down, I'm sliding it in. When I slide it in, it like grinds right here and like catches, and sometimes she'll pop out like that. And it's just, so I gotta like lift up and put her in there like that. When I paint it, I don't even know what that's going to do. And then it hits this side over. I dislike these. I hate this style of box, period, anyway, in any board game. But this tray right here has been the bane of my existence, especially trying to get it out and put it back in. Now, sadly, that doesn't just... I'm not even going to be able to close this. You can suffer too in the video while I try to do that. Okay, so... whatever. Oh, here, we can go down here. Okay. Now, that doesn't just affect setup either, because there are times where you'll draw a card. It'll say, draw this card. And it'll be like, spawn this guy here. And, oh, I didn't have that guy there because he wasn't part of the setup. You will have more than 3, fairly often, actually. You'll have 4, maybe even 5. It can get kind of high, depending on, what you're doing. And so when you do that, like if you have to spawn that, well, then you have to go get that, and you have to open that up again. And that's just another chance. The first time I spilled it was that. I was in the middle of the game. I just pulled it out. And when I pulled it out, it just flipped and just launched them everywhere. Because they can't bother to put a lid on it, because they're hoping to God that this right here will act as the lid when it doesn't, especially when it's off the table or anything like that. If you want to leave it on the table, it's still open to whatever. They should have had a lid on it, period. I don't even know why it's a separate piece. Just make it, well, like, why on earth? Why on earth? I'm going to open this again. Why on earth is this separate to begin with? Just make 2 layers. It's 2 layers anyway. Why is this separate? Why did they do this? I don't know. They must hate us. I think that's what it is. I think CMON just hates me and wants me to dump all the minis and pick it up several different times and get frustrated at the game because they can't be bothered to do something as plain and simple as make 2 whole layers. Or put a lid on it. Put a lid on it. Okay, anyway, so that's a negative. Okay, another negative you're going to find out is these stupid tiles. Now, if you saw my unboxing, I showed you how bad these tiles are. I compared them to the Oko game that I unboxed, that I showed you guys about, and like seriously, it is bad. These are not good cardboard. They're very quite bendy. They're very squishy. You can see the layers. It's very frayed, and there's a lot of tags, and these are not as good as Monolith. They're not as good as Mythic Games. They're not as good as Red Joker. They're not as good as Awakened Realms. They're not as good as all of these other companies that you have games for. These are worse. CMON does worse in this. Okay, these are just plain worse. But it's worse than that, because what you do is you gather all of those, right? You follow the instructions, you get all the tiles, and then you shuffle them. Now, they have you shuffling these poor things, which means, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so you can see. Okay, so now you should be able to see that I have not played every single scenario in the core box yet. I've played quite a bit, but not all of them, and they are already starting, as you can see, to, just get ruined, right? I cannot imagine how bad this is going to be if I actually play this game a lot and enjoy it. So if you think you're going to enjoy this game, your tiles are going to look even worse than this. Now, there are things you can do to help mitigate it a little bit. You can lay them down and do that. But even just stacking them together or doing that, when I first got this out and unboxed it, it had issues. Not only that, but you know what tile it is. I know that the Grand Cathedral has 2 dings here, and then there's a little part right here. If I can get that reflected there, where it's a little flat. So when I see this on the top, I know the Grand Cathedral's coming up. Same here. There's dings here. They all get unique. You see the dings even like in the, like right here, right? Like all these little imperfections that are just coming from being so soft and squishy and crap. These suck. They're terrible. And you have to deal with them a lot when setting up the dynamic map and when shuffling. Not good. Okay. Another thing you'll notice. There's not that many tiles in this game, and you will see them all before the end, and you'll see them over and over and over again. In fact, every game I have had has happened to have the alleyway in here. Here's the alleyway, and I've seen that every single game. Every single one. Because every single one has these random tiles, and I just happen to draw them, especially at higher player counts. You're just going to see it all. And they're all this kind of blue, design here, which really kind of gets like supposedly I'm in a different section of the town, but it looks the exact same as the other one. Now, I will say that the random layout helps kind of change that a little bit, but still for the most part, it's kind of like, when you get a battle board for like a boss battler and it's the same thing and nothing really changes, it's kind of like that. Like in Oathsworn, you're just always fighting in the woods, though not always, because there is a second one that I haven't even seen, but apparently there's a second battle board. But you're doing that over and over again. Now with those, there's not different sections like this, so they kind of just goes into the background. Kingdom Death Monster, same thing. You're not really noticing the art per se. Interest Odyssey, same thing. Whereas with a game like this, with actual sections and doors and stuff, you tend to actually notice. And trust me, I noticed that it's the same gray, blue, courtyard lamp, Odeon chapel place that I've seen every single other time. And so that is kind of unfortunate. The layout helps a little bit, but these are quite repetitive, and that's pretty much all you get. So you're going to be seeing these a lot. So get used to it looking just like that, but maybe in a slightly different order. Now, another issue I found, and this is just kind of telling, I guess. Second chapter, there's a setup rule that doesn't make sense. It tells you to spawn something somewhere, and that doesn't even exist. And that always kind of worries me, especially when they tell you to start with the long hunt. They're like, we suggest you start here. And by the second chapter, the setup instructions are already wrong. To me, that's quite telling of maybe there's some fit and finish that's an issue, which is probably why there's an FAQ that's just as long as the rulebook. Maybe it's because of that. So you get that kind of unfinished thing, and it's worth noting. If it had just been one issue throughout it, that's fine. But this is essentially the tutorial that they tell you to do it in. And if there's an issue in there, I think that should have been caught. And if it wasn't, that's a negative. So counting that as a negative as well, that's not okay. At least get your tutorial right. All right, time for some positives. So one of the big positives I found were these side missions. You get these insight missions, and there's a lot of them. Like, there's a point where you can't possibly finish them all. There's like 4 or 5 going on at the same time, depending on how you're closing them. But one mission can have quite a few. And so with that, you just end up doing a lot of different things. And there's a good variety too. That's another positive, is the things you're doing. I met a hunter once, and then I could have like fought him, or I could have helped him. And if you fight him, well, then obviously you have to fight him. And if you help him, well, then you actually have to, he's like, I need to go explore with you. So he's following you around, and you're laying tokens down, and he has to visit so many tiles, and you're doing that. Another time, maybe you having to bring a certain enemy to a certain location for somebody to do something special, or you're having to hunt a certain kind of monster, and so you're trying to find them and make sure you farm the respawns. And it reminded me a lot of the video game too, when you're doing something like that. Like, I'm just hunting Scourge Beasts right now, and that's what I'm doing, right? Or like this one, where we had to fight these Scourge Beasts, and then we had to like lay their corpses down in a certain location as bait. And then eventually the big monster comes, right? And then we fight him, and then we have to lure him to a certain section of the map. And there's a lot of different the variety of missions, and the amount of missions you get in each chapter of each campaign is actually quite good. And again, just like with the enemy variety, a surprising amount of depth there, to where a second playthrough you can focus on trying to finish the other ones and hear a little bit more about that. The story is not heavy, just like in the video game. It's not something where you're gonna just get info dumps, but it is cool to see different things happen, and especially with like your decisions you make, which I'll talk about that in a little bit. Before I get into that, I want to talk about something I just mentioned, and that's getting a specific enemy to a specific location. This is a negative, and I'm going to tell you why. This is actually the exact map layout that I had on my second mission. And here is the issue. So here's Losefka's clinic, and what her mission is to bring specific enemies to this location and kill them. Now that seems fine, right? Except because of the random draws of the map tiles, there are no enemies in this tile, no enemies in this tile, and no enemies in this tile. So I had to go through 2 blank tiles just to get to an enemy. And it depends on the enemy. At one point it was, maybe the huntsman. Well, there he is over there, so I have to come down here and get him and then drag him over there. Or maybe it's the Scourge Beast. I have to go over here and drag him there. And dragging them are actually kind of difficult, especially if you only have core box. There is one guy who can like bring people, like pull people towards him and attack, something like that, which is kind of cool. But then you have to like not kill the person too. It gets weird no matter what. But there's very limited ways to move a mini, except when you start a movement in their location and move out, you can move up to 2, they will move 1 in pursuit. Okay? So now I've done that, but I can't do that again because I'm not in there. I only have 3 cards to move, right? Now, at the end of my turn, they will also move 1 and try to attack. So let's say I'm trying to get this guy, and let's say I start in his zone, which means I've already been in there once, okay? So maybe not. Maybe I'm like right there or something like that. Either I have to move in, then I have to move out, and he moved 1. Then I have to move again at least 1, but maybe 2 or whatever, because I don't want to be attacked. So now I've moved them 2. So the next turn I have to do that again and again. It takes 2 to 3 rounds to bring a guy there, and you have to do that, I think, 3 times maybe. I forget exactly how many, but it sucks because there's this time limit here. If you get past this, it's game over. You have to restart the entire campaign. So I could have, with the random layout I had, I just got bum luck. You could have easily have just happened to do this. And maybe this was your mission. Okay, that could have easily been the spawn. Now that's completely random. It's not up to me. It's not my choice. It's not anything like that. I just happened to get lucky. And so if you happen to do that, well, then that's easy because he's right there. Bam, he's there. You're done. Attack him. So the difficulty can ramp up wildly because they have a random board layout with random enemies and a random chess with missions that require specific enemies in specific locations. And that's just impossible to balance. You can't do it with a random draw. It just doesn't work. You can't do that, especially with a time limit. So we come across that, right? And we're like, well, okay, we can't waste the 3, 4, or 5 turns it would take just to get to that one, because that's only one of 2 insight missions we needed to do. So let's do another one. Well, the Odeon Chapel one. Okay, what does that one do? Okay, well that one, let's go and move it back to how it was, right? This is what I was stuck with, this stupid thing with these stupid blank tiles, is to go get chests. And in fact, we have to get 3 chests. I was playing 2 players at the time, so we had to get 3 chests. It's just the number of players plus 1 in that case. And then and then bring the item back. We would get survivors every time we'd go there. Well, the problem again is there was a chest way over there. there's a chest over there, there's a chest over here, a chest over there. Either way, you're 2 tiles away or more, and you have to get 3 of them. Once they go, they don't respawn until you actually respawn that, and all of them except that one and this one have enemies on them that you would also have to deal with. And so we would have to go over here and fight this guy or deal with him somehow, because if you interact to get the chest, then you're going to get attacked anyway. So you're going to have to deal with the guy, then get the chest, then bring it back and do that and multiple times. This is the closest one because it's only 1, 2. You can actually do it within 1 move. Everything else is at least 2 cards just to move, right? Because this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 cards to get to that one. And this one, if you happen to be here, is 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2 cards to get there and get back. Again, you are only drawing 3 per turn. There is a time limit, and you have to restart the whole campaign if you don't. Again, I could have been lucky where the Odeon Chapel was maybe right here with this right here and that right there, and there were just chests right on the side of it. Anytime you need specific things on a random place and to a specific location, you just cannot balance it. And I saw this constantly. And then to put a time limit on it where you only have so many moves, and it just isn't fair. There's no, if you lose, it's not your fault. You just got a bad random draw. You just lucked out on the crappy tiles that you had to lay down, that you just happened to do that. It's not because you played worse. It's not because you played better. If you lucked out, you lucked out. And if you had bad luck, you had bad luck. That is just not the gaming experience I ever desire to have. It's stupid, and honestly, it feels really amateurish. Now, I'm not one to talk because I haven't designed a game, but I do know that if you need something specifically there, and it's a random thing, it's gonna be imbalanced. You can't, it just doesn't work that way. You know, like those are mutually exclusive things. You either have random placement of things or you need specific placement of things. Which is it? And apparently they picked both or neither. I don't know. Either way, really frustrating. Really frustrating. So really, I guess I'd like to capstone this with the last thing of is, for a game without dice, this is one of the most random games I have ever played. It's up there with the top tier randomness, right? You have the random layout tile. You have the random enemies. You have the random tiles within the layout. You have the random enemy actions. You have the random draw. You have the random upgrades, and a whole bunch of unknown missions until you play it the first time through. You have unknown random boss attacks, and there's a lot of randomness in this game, and I was very surprised by that. I thought the whole point of Blood Rage and Dark Souls-like games is that there's not a lot of randomness. In fact, I could have sworn that we were reading about how that's why they didn't do dice. But dice I can mitigate. Dice I can manipulate. I can't mitigate or manipulate my tile placement. I can't do that. I can try and mitigate for an enemy action just a little, but I can't manipulate it. It really sucks that this is completely random. You can't do nothing about that. Same with this. There's nothing to do about that. It's just what it is. Same with the tile placement. So there's at least 3 random elements in this game that you can't even touch. And that really sucks. It really does to see that much randomness in a board game designed from a video game that's all about being fair when it's a difficulty. Okay, let's go back to some positives because I'm getting really flushed here. And there are a lot of positives too, so let's go ahead and discuss those. The multi-chapter sections or decision making is very, very cool. So for instance, in the first chapter of The Long Hunt, you might come across a lady, and you might have to decide whether she lives or dies. And you can make that decision, and then what it is you slot that in your little save slot, you have a little insight card, and you're like, okay, I picked that. Then later on, you might go to a location or talk to somebody or do something that says, do you have this card? And you either have the I killed her card or the I let her live card. And based on that skews the entire rest of that mission to some other thing. And it will be completely different what you experience. Completely different what the objective is. And you'll be doing different things depending on what you decide. And you see that a lot. In fact, you get multi-tiered one in other missions, not so much in the Long Hunt. It's a little bit more straightforward, but in other ones, it's going to be like, do you have this and you're missing this? Or do you have this and this and you're doing... And the fact that they did that within 3 chapters for a campaign, really impressive. And again, it shows, I guess, how much variety is in those side missions that I talked about kind of earlier. really impressed by that, and a lot of fun to see that. So there was a point where we were like, oh, we had to deal with your mess because one of our players didn't play a later one but did play an earlier one, and and so they had made a decision and then we had to deal with it afterwards, and we were like angry with them for making that decision, and it was all in fun, but it was kind of funny to see that those repercussions happen. It was actually pretty impressive, and it happens in all of them. Okay, so another thing I love is the fact that, and they took this from the IP, is the kind of the runes and slotting and all that kind of stuff, benefits that you can get. Like, there is a specific rune that you can get. You have all these different rewards and runes that you can have. And like some of them, like there's one that allows you to slot your attack weapon. So you can actually slot your slash. So it does an extra speed and an extra, damage. And not only that, but every time you flip your weapon, you get to re-slot it and re-pick it out. So you can be very dynamic and how you did that. And it kind of reminds me of that whole planning phase when you are at the Hunter's Dream and you're there in like the workshop and you're like, okay, I'm going to slot this in here. And then when I go fight those guys, it's going to be way better because I'll be faster or whatever, right? I'll do that extra little bit of damage so that, because I only have +9 on my weapon or some junk like that. And that's really great. It has a really great feel to do that. And it just adds more, actions that you can do as a player. You can have 2 runes and you can have 2 kind of hunter rewards. So you have these 4 unique things that only you can do. And it's cool if you're the guy that's slotting the things, or if you're the person that's getting a free movement pretty much every time you come out of the Hunter's Dream. And they're all refreshed when you go back into the Hunter's Dream, so you can keep reusing them. And it's just a lot of fun. And it was very thematic, and it felt like Bloodborne, and I liked that. Now, another great thing, talking about the Hunter's Dream, is how this Hunter's Dream, it reminds me a lot of Small World. If you've not played Small World, the most important decision in Small World is when you retire your race to pick a new one, because you lose your whole turn. And that's pretty much the same thing here. It's very hard to decide when is the right time to go to Hunter's Dream. You can only have 3 Blood Echoes, and each Blood Echo gets you an upgraded card. And so if you kill enemies and you have 3, then you're wasting it. You're not getting those Blood Echoes. And if you die with any of them, you lose them, unless you have a rune that allows you to keep one. And so you're constantly deciding, okay, I have 2, and also it heals you up. It clears your weapon. It flips over your firearm. So it kind of resets you. And so you can go there and be like, okay, then I can buy stuff. I'll get an instant heal. I'll clear out all of my weapons here and I'll flip this. So it's very beneficial. But the moment you do, you slide that little timer down and suddenly it's a round closer. And that can be very detrimental, not even if just for losing, but for these resets. Because if you're trying to drag this guy and you've gotten him to here and the next turn there, but you're right here, well, if somebody goes to the Hunter Dream, you reset the map. He goes back over there. You've now wasted that whole time. And so you kind of have to decide, especially with these, like, okay, well, we're right here, so let's all go beforehand so that then when we jump back in, we'll be able to pull them, or, whatever it is that you need to do. Deciding when and how to use the Hunter's Dream is a big deal. When you're in fog gates, you can have these fog gates come up when you're fighting a boss. And the only way to leave that is to go to the Hunter's Dream. And so you can go and you can do that. But again, then that round moves, and I really enjoyed making that decision and finding out when is the best time to do that. I thought that was very well done. Some more positives. Another real big positive is this deck building. So you'll have 4 right here that you can pick from. And every time you go to the Hunter's Dream, you get rid of your Blood Echoes, and now I get to pick one. And I get to define whether I get leaping or agile or defensive and bloodthirsty, and I'll replace one of my basic ones. Now, typically, most of them are 1-to-1. So, for instance, you might have this basic stagger. Well, the agile that does a stagger at +1 speed is just clearly better. It has the exact same symbol, and it's an easy replacement. Right? And so you can do that and just have the better versions of your base deck. Or, maybe you have a +1 attack where you get +1 damage, but then you could get leaping where you get +1 damage, but you also get a free movement, right? Clearly better. And so you get all of these different things, but you don't have to. You could replace your dodge with the leaping. You could make it to where all of your cards draw. I did one build with one of the characters that actually had a bonus on their weapons, because, like, for instance, this says that attacks with stagger also deal +1 damage. So if I'm playing the Saw Cleaver and I like the side of it, I can just get all of my cards to do stagger. So no matter what I'm doing, even there's somewhere you can dodge and stagger. So you can either dodge with it or use it to attack and stagger. And when you get something like that, that means I now essentially have a dodge with a +1 attack plus a stagger, because you still get the stagger where the enemy doesn't attack if you attach faster than them. So in other words, if I did a quick stagger and they're doing a medium attack back, well, I staggered their attack and they don't attack back at all. It's fantastic. It's really cool. And you can build this specific character like that. Or you can keep it to where you're dodge heavy, or to where you just do extra damage and you're just a glass cannon, or you can do stuff that heal, or there's even a defensive one where you get to block 2 damage, or there's a rally where you get to heal after the attack, just like in the video game, mind you. There's some like Bloodthirsty where you get to do an on-kill, a draw 1 and heal 1, so I get to be able to attack. It does +1 damage, and then if I kill the enemy, I draw 1 and heal 1. That's a hugely beneficial card if I play my cards right and if I build my deck the way I want to. And so you can do that. If you have a deck full of draw cards specifically, you're going to have some amazing turns depending on what it is you're able to do. And that's because I think draw's a little overpowered. So you only have 3 cards, right? And everything costs a card. If I want to go to Hunter's Dream, I have to discard a card. If I want to flip this, I want to discard a card. If I'm attacking, these stay here. If I want to be able to attack another with a strong thing, I have to discard this to be able to flip it, right? So when you have a whole bunch of draw cards, well, your turn just becomes some epic crazy turn, right? Because what happens is you attack with the slash, and then you attack with the cut, and that allows you to draw and draw more, and then that allows you to get one to then flip. So then you're doing that, and then you can attack the new one, a heavy carve with another draw, and then that allows you to draw another one, which then allows you to move, so then you can move, and as you can see, you can do a ton more actions, because those are really your action points. And so draw is really kind of overpowered, and in fact, it's more so. I'll talk more about that in a negative. In fact, it'll be my capstone negative at the very end of this video, and I'll kind of talk about the repercussions of that negative and how draw affects that. But suffice it to say, moving on from that, a little tease there, I guess, the abilities that you get, not only is the deck building fun, but they give you abilities that you actually do things. Anytime I talk about whether or not something feels different, right? We could all have our own characters, right? Like, Primal is a good example of this, right? You all have your own characters, and technically your cards do different things, but they're not having you do different things. Like, it's all meta or out there. But when I have leaping, right? And if I get enough leaping cards where I get a free move action, first of all, that saves me a card to discard to move. But it means that I can go and attack that, and then suddenly I'm moving across the board and attacking. I could then couple that with other things that allow me to move, and I could just be this freaking move ninja that's going around everywhere. And that it feels different than somebody who might just be super dodgy and has a whole bunch of dodges and just attacks with these light attacks if they have a light weapon like this, where you can just do these quick cuts, but you're laying it down and then you're dodging and you're clearing your things. So you can constantly have this, because if you do enough dodges, it clears the slot and you never build it up. You don't ever have to transform it. You could just have the Saw Cleaver in this mode the whole time by doing that. You can do a heavy attack in the slash, and you can do a dodge. There are dodges that allow you to clear other slots, so you could dodge that and clear the slash again. That feels different and allows you to actually do things that are different than what other hunters are doing. And it really makes each hunter feel different. Like I said, there's one hunter that has a scythe, right? Not in the core box, where he can actually drag people towards him on an attack. So he attacks, and it's kind of like a leaping, but he stands still and drags people there. That's also a great way to move enemies. But again, you can just be like, hey, get over here, and Scorpion it if you want to. And you feel a little like Scorpion when doing it. And it's pretty cool. It's cool to see other people do it, and they're doing things that you can't do. And it's cool to do things that other people can't do. So combined with the rune system and all those unique things that you can do, it just makes every single character build feel satisfying. And I think that's a huge plus. Now, real quick, I do want to make a quick comment about the most common thing you're doing in this game. That's drawing 3 cards and playing 3 cards. Now, I'm really big on making sure that the core of your game is good. And the core of your game is whatever you do the most often. One of the reasons I was so negative on Reichbusters is because the thing you do the most often is a noise roll. You do that for many other actions. You do it for looting, and for opening a door, and for attacking, and for all this other stuff. You roll noise more than anything else. That's your main interaction with that game. So if that's not satisfying or good, then that's obviously a big negative. Well, the most common thing you're doing is having these cards and having to decide whether that you want to attack and get that draw one, that coveted draw one, or whether you use this to move because you just need to move so that you can then just stagger instead because you are low on health. And making that decision between, do I keep the draw or do I keep the stagger? Or maybe it's all full and all I have is a quick cut. I could do the quick cut, or I could get rid of this and flip it and finally be able to do other things. That decision-making process is what you do every single turn, and it's great. That trade-off of potential is kind of what I look at it as. It's where this is your potential, and you're actively saying, no, I'll just move. Or, no, I'll just go to the Hunter's Dream. Or, no, I'll just flip my weapon. Or, no, I'll just loot the chest or whatever. And it's so hard, especially when you have one of your cool cards, especially when you're mixed with the basic. I might have a leaping here, and then I might have 2 draws. And now I'm like, okay, I need to loot. I could loot this chest and go, but if I loot the chest, I have to discard one of these, and I want to keep these. But the more I use, the more I'll draw, because I can only have 3. So if I'm left with 2, I'm just going to draw 1 next. But I like to keep this leaping here because that's so useful. So I won't use the leaping. I won't use it. I'll do this, and then I'll move. So I'll take the chest, I'll take my card, and then I'll go. And that decision process is really satisfying. And that is the core of this game. And so I can clearly say the core of this game is, well, it's satisfying. It's fun. It's strategic to be able to do that and figure out what it is you're going to do. For all the randomness in this game, the most common thing you're doing is making strategic decisions on what cards to play from the deck that you custom built for the character that you picked. And it all is so sweet. It works out great. Okay, now that I'm gushing, let's go to negative again. And this is the biggest negative I have, by far. To the point where I've house rolled this game. So spoiler alert there. There is a difference between being difficult and being punishing. As a fan of the Dark Souls-like games, whether it's Dark Souls or Bloodborne or anything like that, or I appreciate the fact that if I lose in one of those games, it's because I got greedy or because I was stupid, right? It's almost always my fault that I died. However, even dying in those games, as hard as they may seem, you always can keep going. There's never a chance where you just can't. And this does have that hard fail state. Now, first of all, it's all my fault. Again, that's talking about kind of the randomness. You might just luck out and not have as good of a time as somebody else who played this, regardless of how optimally you played it. Spoiler alert, when it was this much, we ran out of time. We ran out of time and we lost. And that was also kind of odd because we actually got far enough to start fighting this guy. In the mid-fight, we ran out of time and then we had to go back to chapter 1. We had to get rid of everything. We had to take all of the leapings and all that out. And let me tell you right now, one of the big negatives here is the reset here sucks. And it's not just when you lose, it's afterwards too. Resetting this deck in the proper order and getting them all there, especially when you saved some there and there are some laid out on the table from when you just played and all that kind of stuff. It takes a while to reset this deck, to reset this deck, to set these decks up again, to shuffle all of the cards, to reset these, to move these back in, to draw new ones and all that kind of stuff. It's like, it reminds me of VHS tapes where you don't want to rewind it, but you know if you don't rewind it, that it's going to cost you. So first time, right, playing through this, we didn't rewind the tape. And so when it came time to film this, guess what I had to do? I had to do all this. And I knew I had to do it because I had done it after the other one that we played as well. And I remember just how long that took. Even just the reset here from chapter 2 took a while. And so it's just almost humiliating to then go and spend the next 10, 15 minutes organizing cards and putting the phase stuff back again and taking all the tokens and taking all the board, all these tiles need to come off, and then you need to grab new ones for the new chapter, and then you need to shuffle them out and place them down if they're special setup stuff, and then get new enemies and do all that. It's a lot to reset, and it sucks. Now, let's talk about fighting a boss and then having to restart the entire game. That doesn't match Bloodborne at all. I don't know if you knew this or not, but that's not how the video game plays at all. In fact, this timer is the fail state, right? You can die as many times as you want, and you go back to Hunter's Dream, and it advances that. And this is the fail state. This is how you lose this game. The problem is that it's not Bloodborne. It's not based on anything in Bloodborne. It's not based it doesn't make any thematic sense at all. It is the most abstract thing I've ever seen in a Amerithrash as far as I'm concerned. That the only way to fail is some abstract concept of a timer. It makes no sense at all that in the middle of a fight, you just like, oh, no, never mind. I guess I'm good. I know you're at 1 health, but nope, we're going to restart the whole game. Eject the disc, delete your save, restart. It doesn't make any sense. It's just an arbitrarily thing that they don't even try to provide a lore sense for, because there is none. It's not based on Bloodborne. It doesn't match Bloodborne. And so how you can decide that the only way to fail Bloodborne the board game, with a colon right there, that's Bloodborne the board game, officially licensed, is to run out of time? It just doesn't make any sense. And then when you get the fact that you can get in scenarios like this, where you can fail at no fault of your own, that you just happen to have to lug through it because you happen to draw blink tiles next to the area that you have to get specific things to specific locations. And that's just dumb. It's just dumb to go and play all this game and play well and do good and be cautious and like optimize your plays and still lose from a random thing that was out of your control because you just ran out of time. It sucks. It's not good, and I hate it. It is by far the worst part of this game, to the point where after I played this for the second time, and the second time got hosed on the layout of everything, and for the second time had to restart this chapter, I decided I'm either never playing this game again or I'm house ruling it, and you guys would not have a review. My review would just be a first impressions where I'd say it sucks. Because that's stupid. It's stupid that I can lose because I happen to, at that point you've lost before you've played the game. You lost the moment you made that stack. You may as well have just rolled a die, put a cup over it, and then go play an actual fun game for a while, and then come back 3 hours from now, lift it, and if you got anything higher than a 15, you won. It's as arbitrary as that. It's as, you can't affect it as much as that. It's a waste of time as much as that. So, I house ruled it to be more thematic and still be challenging, to the point where we actually lost again. Instead, I just made it to where you cannot die more than the player count. So if you're playing 2-player, two people can die, or you can die twice. But the moment there's that third death, you're gone. You're gone. It's good to go. You can still die quite easily. Again, when it's just a timer, you almost don't care. I mean, you do because you die and then do that, but you could die 5 times and maybe still win, especially if you got lucky on the layout. So you could play worse and win, and play better and lose. I don't know who thought that was a great game concept, but it's not. It's a terrible one. If you tie it to the death, not only is it more fitting to the theme, but it's also a lot more fair, because then you could get hosed on something like this, and it's fine if it takes more. You just loop it. It still gets harder, especially because, there's little, stuff here and you still are advancing that. People are still resetting, but it also provides you enough opportunity to be cautious because you don't want to die. And it's very similar to playing the video game where maybe you just want to go there and I don't know if I should go there because if I go there, that might, if I turn that corner, if I explore that area, I might run into something I'm not prepared for. I'm going to go back. I'm going to save all my stuff. I'm going to, get ready for the next battle and then go in with a fresh face. That's what you do in the video game. You don't just keep going and this is not Bloodborne the board game speed run, right? This is Bloodborne the board game, and it should be tied to you losing by dying if you're going to lose at all. Again, in the video game, there's no real sense of failure. You just keep going. That worked quite well. And in fact, quite well to where I have so much fun with this game. So much fun with this game. It is just great. I love it. I love those decisions. And I know I just flipped because that house rule changed everything for me. The timer is stupid. The layouts are stupid. They're all tied together. There's no reason I should be fighting a boss and then suddenly, because I was playing really well and doing good, but I didn't go fast enough. That's not Bloodborne. Anyway, I had a ton of fun. Once you get to that and you're really cautious and you're worried, you're doing your deck building and you're playing your cards and you're exploring the area and you get that sense of exploration and wonder, not, oh crap, I got the courtyard lamp. Shoot, that's a blank tile. I hated the courtyard lamp. It wasn't used and I don't think any of the scenarios in here actually used it. I kept drawing it. It was stupid. Or like I was just trying to find the next one, and the last tile on the stack, instead of being 3 random ones that I didn't need, were the 3 that I did need, because I didn't get this great bridge until the second to last turn. So I could never even do that mission, because I didn't happen to get the tile, because it happened to be the last one. And we were so busy on that. And then we finally explored another one, and sure enough, there it is. It was the second last one, so I wasn't sure if it was this one or that one. Yeah, it was so much more fun and so much more enjoyable with that. So once I house ruled that, I began to adore this game. I really, really like Bloodborne, the board game, King of Averages edition. I don't know what that means, though. Does that mean this was a good game or a bad game? In my opinion, anything I have to house rule is bad, right? I didn't like doing it with the noise and Reichbusters. I don't like doing it here. I don't like the fact that not only did I have to fix the stupid failsafe to match the game and still be hard and still be difficult like it should be, but actually be my fault, not their fault, but there's that huge FAQ stuff and stuff like that. There's a good core here. Again, the most common thing you're doing is this. The most common thing you're doing is building this deck and your character and going through it and doing these missions and going into these insights and exploring and finding these cool monsters and these bosses with all these different mechanics. And it's a lot of fun to do that. It really is. It just sucks that CMON couldn't execute as well as I think they should have. Whether it's the crappy component quality or whether it's the arbitrary timer that's not based on any kind of theme at all in a game full of theme based off of an IP. But that's my opinion. I would love to hear yours. I'm sure you guys have been playing this. Have you experienced things like I just described? Or maybe you've lucked out, or maybe you didn't care. Maybe you thought it was great the way it is and I'm wrong, and that's fine too. I would love to discuss with you, because stuff like this is it's kind of odd, right? It's kind of a gray area. But either way, that's my review for Bloodborne, the board game. And hopefully it helped you. Again, that was just the core box here. That's what I've been focused on here. Now that I've done this review, I can, varnish my thoughts with a whole bunch of other stuff and just throw everything in, play all the expansions and all that. But anyway, that's it. I hope you had a great day. Again, there's a link down below to that INTOTHEAM. These shirts are awesome. I wear them all the freaking time. I love them to death. And with 20% off, they're actually a pretty good deal too. So again, link down below to that. And there's a lot of cool designs there too. With that, I'll let you guys go. Have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you again real soon.